welcome to another edition of Night Talk. Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another edition of Night Talk. I'm here with Richard Tatti. He's going to come back on screen in a moment, but I'm going to do a little introduction first. Richard, we'll see you in a minute. Hold on. So, hi. You might be expecting Gabe right now, right? And I'm just hitting go live over on Instagram. There we go. Hi, everybody. Matt Hill here. This is another edition of Night Talk. And let me pull up the rest of my notes here. This is an afternoon edition of Night Talk. Today, we'll be chatting with the popular YouTube astrophotographer Richard Tatti, otherwise known as Nightscape Images. I'm your host, Matt Hill from National Parks at Night. So come on in, grab a seat. We have a very astrocentric conversation for you today. And thank you for joining us. Comment below, where in the universe are you tuning in from? And while you do that, here's a quick PSA. The Olympics of night photography events are happening this year. The Night Photo Summit. This is the must-attend winter virtual conference on all things night photography, and it's back. Streaming to you February 13th through 15th, 2026. It's 3 days of inspiration, education, and networking that feature 40 plus presenters, 45 plus hours of content, and access to all sessions for 1 year. Learn more and purchase your ticket at nightphotosummit.com. If you prefer learning in person, testing telescopes at star parties and photographing under Bortle 1 to 3 skies, then go for the gold and join us at the Nightscaper Photo Conference, May 14th through 17th in the Four Corners region of New Mexico. You can learn more about that at nightscaper.com. Now, let's check in on the comments. Where is everybody tuning in from? Let's see what we got here. We have Steve Barnes. Hey, Steve, how you doing? We have, here we go, Andy from Southern Oregon. We got Kathy tuning in from Chicago. We've got Arlington, Virginia. We've got Jackson, Wyoming. This is awesome. We got West Virginia. We have Chris from Charlotte, North Carolina. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you all for saying hello. And we also, over here on Instagram, we have a bunch of Bellingham, Washington. This is fantastic. And we've got our friends over in Maine. Look at this. This is awesome. And then we have Gabe also tuning in. So the part that you might not have noticed is that I'm not Gabe Biederman. Oh, well, Gabe got stuck. It's a little wintry here in New York right now. Gabe was passing between one place and another, and the snow sort of slowed him down. So, yeah. So we have to we have me today. It's your win. No, I'm sorry. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna have a lot of fun, and this is good. Let me just catch up to the rest of the things. Where else do we have people coming in from? We have over here. Gabe is on a train someplace. Welcome, welcome. Well, we're really excited about having Richard with us today. So let's bring Richard in, and I'm just going to find the rest of my notes here. And here we go. Our special guest today on Night Talk is Richard Tatti. He's a passionate astro landscape photographer who spent many years under the stars. He shares his deep knowledge of the gear, technique, and inspiration on his popular YouTube channel that I highly recommend following, Nightscape Images. Let's give a warm welcome to Richard Tatti. Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Hello, Matt. Very well, thank you. Great to be here.
Great to have you. Thanks for waiting patiently in the wings while I went through all that other stuff. How you feeling?
That's quite all right. No, I'm good. I'm good. It's a sunny 31 degrees Celsius here in Australia. So you guys are struggling through winter. I'm trying to shelter from heat.
Oh,
We
wow.
had, and by the way, 31 degrees Celsius is about 88 degrees Fahrenheit, just so those can do the conversion. But last week, it was 43 degrees here. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's well over 100.
Sounds hot.
It's hot. It's
Sounds
hot.
hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My goodness. Wow. That's extraordinary. So I don't know enough about the geography of Australia. Where in Australia are you?
Well, I'm in the southern state of Victoria. And if anyone knows where Melbourne is,
I do.
where I live is a town called Bendigo, which is about a 2-hour drive north of Melbourne. So we're inland, away from the coast, and it's a quiet area. The town of Bendigo, where I live, it has a district population of about 100,000 people. So that's, but you know, it's not a huge town. We were just talking before. I live in about a Bortle 4 sky zone as far as darkness goes, but I can get away to about a Bortle 2 in about 20 minutes. So that's basically where I am. But here in Australia, it's very much like that. It's easy to get away from the big cities.
I am a little bit jealous because, I live 2 hours north of New York City, and the Light Dome is gigantic.
Yeah.
I look to the south and I just can't get away from it. And they're like a Bortle 4 or 5, right? I can't travel 20 minutes and get down to a 3. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, it's good. It's good. It's because of the we've only got a 35 million population here in the whole country.
Yeah.
And the country is about the same size as the United States. So that's very thinly spread around the coastal regions as well, because it's very hot, very arid, and very dry in the middle of Australia, which, by the way, is Bortle 1 as far as you can look.
Oh my gosh. What's the name of that really interesting land feature, like kind of in the middle of the outback?
Uluru.
Yes.
It used to be called Ayers Rock. It's a great big, it's a rock in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Have you been there?
No, I haven't been there. But it's well known, very well known.
All right. Well, someday maybe we can go there together. I've never been to Australia.
Yeah.
It must be hard to get to.
It's a long way from anywhere. Yeah.
Literally the middle of nowhere.
Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, what's going on in your night skies? What's currently up? What's showing?
Orion, of course, which is basically, we see, for example, Orion here in Australia, in the southern hemisphere where I live, is in the northern sky. Now, I know for you it's in the southern sky, so it's opposite and it's upside down. But we see some constellations here in the southern hemisphere that you guys in the north never see. For example, the Southern Cross, which is in the southern sky here for us. And it's a constellation of a cross, and it has 2 beautiful big stars as, if you like, pointers that point to it. And it just rotates around the South Celestial Pole. And where I live here, it never actually sets below the horizon. So it's there all the time. And it's really interesting because in the middle of summer, for example, here, which is now, let's say January here is summer, then it's very low down on the horizon. But in the middle of winter, say in June or July, here, it's right up high in the south, but it's still in the southern sky. It never moves from there. We also have a couple of galaxies called the Magellanic Clouds, which are naked eye visible. They're faint, but you can see them. And it's really funny because a lot of people, when they first start taking photos of the night sky here, see these clouds and think, oh, I didn't see those clouds in the sky, thinking they were actual physical clouds in the sky in their district. But they're actually galaxies that are visible. They're quite large and visible to the naked eye. So it's a funny thing that a lot of people try and clone them out or something because they don't think they should be there.
No.
Oh yeah, it's true.
That sounds like a tragedy. I've seen them. I've photographed them. I deliberately seek them out, and to clone them out would be.
Well, it's only because they think they're a little puffy cloud that snuck into their photograph. So they don't understand that they're actually a galaxy.
It's in the name, though. large and
Yeah.
small Magellanic
Well,
Clouds?
absolutely. But when you first start photography, you don't understand the names. You don't understand the geography of the night sky at all. You just go out and point your camera into the sky. So, yeah.
I have another question that's sort of astro-oriented. Since you're well in the southern hemisphere, and most of our audience is in the northern hemisphere, what's your Milky Way season like?
Oh, it's brilliant. We'll put it this way. At the end of this month, January, I can go out at about 3:30 to 4 o'clock in the morning, and the Milky Way galactic core will be rising in the southeast sky, and it will rise up until sunrise, which is maybe an hour to an hour and a half after that. And as each week progresses after that, the Milky Way is visible earlier and earlier. So if you really push hard, you can see the Milky Way galactic core from the end of January, or let's say the start of February, in the morning sky to the end of October, where it's setting in the southwest. So it's a very long Milky Way season.
That's a long season. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Oh my gosh. I'm considering relocating.
Well, a lot of people say that, but yeah, it's a lot. But of course, it's a long way from anywhere here.
I've heard. That's probably
you
why
jump on an airplane. It takes you all day to get here.
My God, 27 hours is the last time I checked. So yeah,
a
couple of layovers, yeah. So what else makes night photography in Australia unique?
I think the well, I've already mentioned the dark sky. That is amazing. So I mean, night photography with dark skies anywhere is going to be amazing. So I think the specific locations, like the landscape here, is quite varied. Completely different to, let's just say, North America or the United States. It's there's a lot more ruggedness. There's a lot of desert in the middle of Australia and places like that. Less mountain ranges and things like that you would see in other parts of the world, but there are enough to make it interesting. But that's one of the things that I have found. Because Australia, and there's also coastline, of course, which anywhere where there's water is always a good photograph. But it's one of the things that I have had to work on over the years is to make ordinary subject matter look interesting. And it's probably the thing I've worked on more than any other single thing over the years. But look, Australia the weather is very good as far as cloudy skies. We don't have let me put it this way. I would say where I live, which is just a typical part of Australia, I would say there's at least somewhere between 60 to 75% clear skies every night. So that's a pretty high percentage, and at certain times of the year that's even higher. For example, there's nothing beats a cool winter, and that's the other thing. It's not extremely cold here. Well, let's put it this way: our in the southern hemisphere, the Milky Way season, as we put it, goes through winter rather than summer, where it is for you. So a lot of people think, "Oh, it's going to be freezing cold. I can't stand that." But it rarely, where I live here, it rarely gets below 0 degrees Celsius. And for a lot of people in the world, that's very warm. Hello, Canada. So you know what I'm saying? I talk about some of these things in my videos, and people, they don't mock me, but they sort of have a bit of a laugh. I'm saying it's cold out here, and it's about 1 degree Celsius, and they're saying try about -20, and you'll be in the ballpark. So conditions, I guess what I'm trying to say, conditions for shooting are pretty moderate and pretty easy to negotiate. I did mention it gets very hot in the summer, but if you're going out shooting at nighttime, it's never as hot as it is in the daytime. So, it might get down to 20 degrees Celsius, which is pretty warm for a lot of people around the world. But it's comfortable, especially when there's no sunlight. It's you just got to negotiate the bugs. And I know someone is going to ask a question about creatures and things that will kill you here in Australia. But honestly, I don't think there's as many here as there is in your country in the United States. So there's no rattlesnakes here. And we don't have mountain lions. We don't have bears. So we might have, I think, half a dozen of the most deadly snakes in the world here, but I don't see too many of those.
I think you're on the tourism board.
Me and my good mate Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee.
That's right. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Well, changing gears. We've been enjoying, all of us, Gabe and I, and all the team in National Parks and I, we've been enjoying the Nightscape Images videos. That's your YouTube channel for years.
Yep.
How long have you been at it? And when did things really click with it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I started the YouTube channel, I think the beginning of 2017, I think was when I started that. But I have a history of videography. I've done a lot of it professionally, but never being on camera. I've never been the talent, if you like. I've always been behind the camera, but I've done a lot of it over the years, probably for the last 25 to 30 years, in a professional sense, corporate videos and weddings and you name it, all sorts of things, theatre and so forth, events. So but the decision to start a YouTube channel was because I was running Nightscape photography workshops prior to that. And I began it initially to help people to remember some of the things we talked about on those groups. And so to put something on onto a format that you can replay, essentially, that's why it started. And I think over the years it's evolved into something that is not just educational content, but I'm trying to inspire people to get out there and do and to have a go at some of these things, because a lot of people don't achieve something because they don't persist with whatever that something is, and so it's quite amazing how many people relate to that, and you sort of feel like you know people personally, even though you've never actually physically met them, and that's simply through comments on videos. And so that's where it is. It's sort of evolved through that, and so it's not just educational content. It's meant to be sort of encouraging. I'm trying to encourage people to have a go at things and to seek out their creative side. One of the things I've noticed on a lot of YouTube is how-tos, and I'm the same. If I want to know how to do something, I'll go to YouTube and YouTube it or Google it, and so. That's a very commonly researched. But on the other hand, I think we need to, especially as photographers, we need to encourage the creative side and try and get people thinking and pondering what is it that motivates them, what makes them tick, and connect that to all the technical stuff that has to happen to get a decent photo of the night sky. And so all of my videos are sort of a combination of all of those things.
I really admire that, and thank you for your generosity and your tenacity in continuing to do this. Do you have any advice that you can give others on wanting to get better if they wanted to continue to share generously on YouTube or to start that up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's hard. It takes a lot of work to make any video, and especially out in the field, and especially in the middle of the night when it's dark as anything. So I've done over the years. I've done various surveys and asked people what content they like the most, or what would they like the most for me to do, for example, on my channel, and 99% of people all say the same thing, and that is we like the in the field videos at night, shooting and talking about why we're doing this and how we do it, and they are by far the most difficult ones to produce, simply because you're out there in the middle of nowhere by yourself. I haven't got a cameraman with me. It's dark. I'm trying to actually take photos, and I'm trying to actually show people what this looks like. it's technically very difficult. And so you have to shoot a lot of B-roll. It takes a lot of time. And so they're the most difficult. The easiest videos to make are ones where you like talking head videos, a bit like a studio like this, because you don't have to go out. You can just you can script things up a bit more. You can show people and images you've already shot. So they're fine, and there's a place for all of these along the way. Some of the times, one of the methodology I've adopted over the years is to rather than go out and show people the actual shooting as I'm shooting it, I go back another day during the daytime and show the location in the daytime, and people really, I think, click, oh, that's what it looks like in daytime. And you can sort of really explain the angles a bit better because people can see the landscape a bit better, or the environment, or they can actually see that you took a photo of that and it looks like that, you know, because you look at some old fence post or something and think, well, wow, how did that come to be in the first? How did you even see that? Because you can drive past and you wouldn't even notice it out the window of the car. Excuse me. And so that's part of the inspiration. I'm trying to encourage people to see things that they would normally not see. So as far as encouraging people to, for example, start a YouTube channel, it's not easy. You need some reasonable equipment, especially audio. And audio is always it takes as much importance to me as the actual vision that you're showing. You know, it's well documented that people will watch a jerky video, but they will not listen to audio that is full of wind noise and peripheral sound effects coming from somewhere. So trying to get decent audio is a must, I think.
It is. Yeah, you might spend as much on a microphone as you do on a lens.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, or at least know where to put it and how to record it well and shield it from wind, as you're mentioning, since we're outdoors, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I never really adopted the classic vlogging style where you've got the camera here with the mic on it and you're talking to the camera. One reason I don't is because my face doesn't look very good that close up. and I prefer to be able to use my hands and move around in the scene. So I tend to always tripod mount this is talking about YouTube videos. I always tripod mount my camera and use a radio microphone. I have done forever. Since the very first day I started, and I tend to use, and that means you can walk away from the camera and still have the same audio. And also I tend to use a lapel mic, which means I can hide the microphone under my collar, and that helps with wind noise and things like that.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing those things.
That's okay.
That craft is very important. If you want to be a great communicator, you might have to pay attention to some things that people might not know takes a lot of extra effort to do, like all these things. So
well, it's, as I call it, it's probably, maybe it's an Australian expression, but it's the 1%ers. It's the little things that you pay attention to, and they eventually add up to becoming a large percentage of what it is that you're actually doing.
Yeah. Let's switch gears again. What fascinated you first about photographing the stars? Where did it begin?
That's an excellent question, and it's something that is very easy to answer. And when I was very young, I always loved the night sky. Always, I used to get outside and just climb up onto the shed or wherever I could get a vantage point and just stare up into the sky. Now, I didn't have much equipment, although my mum was a pretty keen amateur photographer. She had no idea of technique, no idea of technical things of any shape or form, but she was always taking photos. And she had, at the time, it was very old. It was a box Brownie film camera. And she said to me, "Oh, you can play with that." So here's me. I'm only a young boy on the shed of my house at home, looking up at the sky, thinking to myself, now, how am I going to take a picture with this box Brownie? Which I did. I attempted all sorts of things. And as you can imagine, the quality was poor. I didn't have a tripod. In fact, it didn't even have a tripod mount as far as I remember. I glued on a bracket onto it so I could actually attach it to something. I was reasonably successful with that camera with star trails, though, because it was one of the film camera. You could just open the shutter and leave it open for hours if I wanted to.
Kidding.
And I had enough light gathering ability with long exposures, if you like, but to capture anything else, it was a battle. But that was where my passion started. Now it's really interesting because that all those years ago, that's where the passion started. But I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't have gear, or I didn't have knowledge to actually do it. And to be honest with you, the equipment wasn't really available at that stage to do it properly. And so fast forward all these years later, where in the meantime, I've done work as a photographer. So I've done professional work as a photographer, and I mentioned a videographer. So I did that for years and years and years. And that's what I do now. I'm still doing that. But so probably about 2011, let's say 2011, 2012, that's when I really got back into, because the equipment, the gear was then available to do this. And so I got back and said, right, I'm going to get back into that now. Because at the time I was doing things like wedding photography and videography and, sporting events and corporates and portraits. So I learned a lot about photography and the principles and the concepts and the techniques and lenses and what have you. That knowledge came. And then after that, my passion started to kick in again with the night photography. And so that's where it really started in earnest. And from there, well, that's from then until now. Now, back in, it was actually just before COVID, when I actually stopped doing weddings and that type of event, because I was running nightscape photography workshops. I could have run hundreds. I had a lot of people wanted to do them, but I just didn't have the space and time. So, but I basically dropped all the other photo work off totally, and up until this point, that's what I've been doing. So I spent a lot of time in the past, let's say, what's that, about 12 or 13 years working on, what I do now, basically. But the passion, the love of it started when I was a little boy.
With a brownie. Did you shoot night photography with a brownie? Did I hear that correctly?
That's right, yeah.
Oh my goodness. My hat is off to you. If I were Gabe, I would actually take a hat off, but I'm not wearing a hat right now, but that's extraordinary. Yeah. Wow. So speaking of gear, you're a Nikon shooter, right?
Yes, I am.
And I see that you test a lot of gear. What's your go-to gear for a night shoot?
It's interesting because over the years, and you would be the same, Matt, when you run workshop groups, you see a lot of different gear, and you see a lot of people using different gear.
Sure.
You see what works for them. One of the things that I've said over the years, I'll get to the gear in a second, but is we have, actually, I tell people this all the time, and some of the audience here will probably have heard this, but my go-to comment is don't believe everything you read or don't believe everything you see on YouTube, even though I am on YouTube. So I've got this sort of saying that if you want to know something about a particular piece of gear, you ask someone who actually uses that particular piece of gear. Now, if you want to know something about a particular piece of gear and someone doesn't use it, but their friend uses it, that's like I guess a second-hand information, and that could be quite accurate. But if you can get a lot of comments or suggestions from people who sort of have only read it themselves on Google or Facebook or YouTube or somewhere, and that to me is not accurate information. So when I guess I'm trying to say that, talking about doing reviews or whatever, you've really got to talk to people who use the gear. Now, I use the Z series cameras, and I've used, before that, I was on the D series Nikon. The D750 I found to be a really good camera in, probably 10 years ago for shooting nightscapes. And I used that up until the Z mount came out, and then moved to the Z6. Now that's a 24 megapixel camera, and I still use the variant of that. So it's a Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3 is the latest version. So I've got the Mark couple of Mark IIs and Mark III version of that camera, which is what I use mainly. Typically, I use prime lenses, fast aperture, f1.8 primes.
Yep.
And pretty much my favorite lens is a 20 millimeter f1.8.
Okay.
But I've got a 14 to 24 f2.8 as well. These are genuine Nikon brand camera lenses. I've used Viltrox as well. They make some pretty good lenses, particularly the 16 mil f1.8.
16 millimeter.
Sorry, which one?
16, is that what you said?
Yeah, 16 mil f1.8 Viltrox. I mean, obviously Sigma make excellent lenses, but they haven't made them for the ZZ mount as yet. And I presume that's a licensing issue. A lot of my friends who shoot Sony have used those lenses. And in fact, I'm shooting a Sony camera for my video. So I have a couple of Sony. I've got the Sony 20 mil f1.8, the 24 f1.4, which is brilliant lens. So I use the A7S3 camera for my video production. That
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because it sees in the dark very, very well, and I need that light gathering ability at high ISO. I tend to shoot most of my videos at about 80,000 ISO at night.
What?
Wow. It goes higher than that, but I don't push it much higher than that.
That's amazing.
It is amazing, yeah, and it's just a stock camera, straight out of the factory. There's no modification. Now I do use one of my Z6 II cameras is it's astro modified, and I do use that one. But all the rest of the cameras I've got are just stock standard cameras. But all of the new cameras and probably the last few generations of cameras, they're all excellent. Canon, Sony, they're really, really good quality. But yeah, look, I've always probably, it's, as people say, you sort of, you tend to stick with what you start with brand when it comes to brands. And, we have all these brand wars out there, don't we, where we talk about, I'm a Canon shooter, I'm a Fuji shooter or whatever. But the reality is, it's a camera. They all have a sensor and all have a lens attached to the front. They do the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and with nightscape photography, there's a lot of editing that happens after the event. So people talk about natural colors and all sorts of things. It really goes out the window when it comes to shooting nightscape photography. I suppose if you're shooting portraiture, which I have done a lot of, you might like a sort of people talk about the warm Canon colors, for example, straight out of camera, which Canon have been known for forever, I think. And in the early days of Sony, people didn't like their colors. They were cold and harsh. And that's sort of typical of, I think that's typical of where cameras have started and come from. For example, Canon is a traditional camera manufacturer for decades, whereas Sony, they make PlayStations and they make televisions. They're an electronics company, and when it comes to color in a camera, is that their first thought? It never used to be, but maybe it is now.
I remember being skeptical when the brand first released cameras at the pro level. Yeah, but they've proven their worth without doubt.
Absolutely,
beyond doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing you'd say about Sony is that they are innovators.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Is there any future tech that you're dreaming of to make night photography easier?
Well, I'm not really dreaming of it. In some ways, I'm dreading it. The AI sort of stuff, which is incredible. I mean, the technology that's there is incredible, and all of us use things like AI noise reduction, and we use clone stamping, and we use object removal in our normal editing, which I think is fine. That's okay, because that's we've used tools like that for forever. It's just a lot easier now. Camera technology hasn't changed much in the past couple of generations, really. I don't think, and it's all good. It's good now, but who knows? I mean, we're always inventing something new. So I don't really. I never want the camera gear or the equipment to take away from the passion and the creativity that we actually have, because it can do that. It can sort of, for example, I bought a Benro Polaris a couple of years ago because all my friends had one.
Right.
Now, I only bought it because of the automated panorama feature. I didn't, because I've got that many trackers already. I don't need another one, and it was the most expensive of all of them. And I hardly used it. And I had a few problems with the original one. And anyway, long story short, I've sold it to a friend of mine, secondhand. It was working perfectly, but I was never using it. And I realized very quickly that, okay, it did automate certain features, but I wasn't using those features. And I sort of like the simplicity of a little standard old tracker that just does one thing, and it does one thing very well.
Sure.
And it connects me still to the reason I'm there, rather than being bogged down in looking at my phone screen, trying to press a whole heap of buttons to. Maybe I'm just getting old and I'm getting old fashioned. I don't know. Maybe that's a valid point. But anyway, I'm not excited about new technology, but I use it when it comes along if it's something that fits with. It makes my job easier.
Here. I appreciate that. Technology doesn't drive us; our creativity does. Our goals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yep.
I feel like that's right on track. I don't want to tell people how to be, but I'm aligned with you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's change gears again. I just want to say, everybody, we are super excited about Richard's talk at our upcoming Night Photo Summit. It's titled Noise Analysis, Comparing Single, Stacked, and Tracked Nightscapes. Can you share with us what people can expect to learn in your session?
Yeah. Well, firstly, we're going to look at those three methods of capturing nightscape images and talk about some of the limitations that associate with each of those methods, and particularly with an emphasis, I suppose, on the noise, because astrophotography, astro landscape photography is always goes hand in hand with noisy images and sort of low light situations and high ISOs, all sorts of things like that we need to sort of use. So I'm going to show a lot of examples, but I'm going to talk about why. One of the things that I've tried to emphasize over the years in my groups, workshops, whatever, YouTube, you name it, is rather than how, we need to ask the question of why. So what everyone always wants to know is, how do I do this? But the real question is, why am I doing this? And if you answer the why question, the how to is the next question to ask. So for example, why do I want to shoot a single frame as opposed to a tracked sky shot, for example? Now, because a lot of people actually don't want to shoot complicated imagery. They just want simplify the process. So that's the why. Okay, all right. So if we worked out that we just want to do simple stuff, how do we do that? That's the next question. And so I'm going to show some of the limitations that are associated with that. But on the other hand, how can we do it if we want to do it? Right. That's part of the thing. So the noise thing, there are methodologies for working with noisy images, and we'll talk about noise reduction and how to do that. Why people might want to use a star tracker, because star trackers are fantastic, and I've been using them for years. And then there's a stacking in which a lot of people. It's funny, Matt. One of the things I have really noticed, especially over the past, let's say, 5 years, fairly recent history, is that people now don't want to begin at the beginning. They want to begin at stage, stage 5.
What's the best way to do it? Show me the hardest way, the most complicated way. Yeah.
It's like starting school at about the year 5 level rather than the year 1 level.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's not how life is. And yet that's what we want to do, because everybody has access to all of the gear. We've got the best camera gear that we've ever been able to have. And it's all accessible at a reasonable cost. Things like star trackers and all these sorts of things are very cheap. They've never been cheaper. Right. And so to buy. And so a lot of people miss out on the learning curve from starting simple and getting the basics right. And so all of these things I'll talk about in the talk, and try and give people, well, I'm trying to inspire people a little bit. And, you know, one of the things I do this too. I have to remember sometimes, where did I start? How did I feel when I started back then?
Right.
What was it that bothered me back then? Because that's the easiest way to get into another person's world, is to remember what it was like when I was there doing that. Right. And you know, this is in no way a criticism of what we see online and everything, but what we see on Instagram or Facebook or whatever is always people's best images. And a lot of those images don't have any description about how they were captured. Right. And so the watcher of those images is very much thinking, well, I suppose they used a tracker, or did they do? Is that a long exposure foreground? You know, we don't have any idea. We don't know how much editing is being done to those images, which is why on my YouTube channel I do a lot of editing videos to sort of walk through some of these steps. And I'm not a person who likes to over edit in the sense of you know, lots of detail, you know, minute little adjustments times 100. That's just not me. Right. I've got a saying which is, a good edit is a quick edit. And maybe I'm showing my motivation here, and that is the difference between my technical side and my creative side. Because over the years I've discerned, dealing with a lot of people, that there's people who love creativity. They just want to get out there and create. They don't want to sit behind a computer for hours, or they don't want to be you know, trying to work out how a tracking mount works. They just want to get out and create. And so anyway, I'll have a lot of discussion about those things, but I'll be showing a lot of comparison images, which are actually single images as opposed to, for example, stacked images of the exact same location, just to give people an idea of how things sort of may fit together and what works for what they want to do. And at the same time, I'm very happy to discuss technical stuff that's a bit more advanced, and you know, if people if that's where they're at, because there's a wide gamut, a range of people using all sorts of equipment these days. And so yeah, that's what the talk is about, and hopefully I can stick all that into 45 minutes.
Well, good luck. I think that you've got a lot to say, and it's a good thing you have a YouTube channel. But you mentioned images. We have 4 or 5 images to look at here. You want to take a look at a few of those so we can see behind the stories about those?
Right, sure thing.
Jump into one right here. Let's see. Let's do that layout. All right, cool.
Yes.
Tell me about this.
Okay, well, I entitled this image "Little Boiler on Wheels." Now, one of the things I do a lot of, Matt, is I drive around the countryside looking for objects or subject matter to shoot. Now, when people look at my images online, wherever they see them, the first thing you will notice is that I place a huge emphasis on foregrounds, and particularly smaller, if you like. This is, I mean, technically it's an astro landscape photograph, but there's not much landscape in the photo. It's just, it's about this boiler. And so I always looking for things like this, and I think, I've got to shoot that. Now where I live is a mining, it's an old mining town. So back in the 1800s, there was big gold mines around. So there's lots of these boilers, which they used on gold mines for all sorts of purposes. Now, farmers being the people who adapt all sorts of junk that may be laying around into some useful pastime, someone over the years has grabbed one of those boilers and put some wheels under it and made it into a water carrier.
Genius.
Now, if you look closely at this picture, you'll see that the wheels are all mixed up. One's a wooden spoked wheel, one's a steel wheel. Anyway, I found it sitting in a paddock. One of the things I do this all the time, by the way, is I thought to myself, okay, here it is sitting in a paddock. There's no house anywhere close. Who owns this? There's a big barbed wire fence out the front on the road. And I thought, well, I'd really like to ask permission to get in there and shoot this. So I drove down the road and find a couple of houses. And eventually somebody said, oh, that's such and such down the road owns that paddock. And I went in, and I usually get attacked by dogs before anything else. But anyway, this elderly lady came out, and she sort of looked at me and said, what do you want? I said, oh, would you mind if I take a photo of your old water carrier down there in the paddock? Oh, what do you want to take a photo of? Anyway, she eventually said, oh, that's okay. Just come back anytime you want. So I did. And this is the result. So it's right by the side of the road, easy to see, but there was this massive barbed wire fence, which I had to climb over multiple times to get into the paddock.
Oh, gosh.
And so what I did with this image, I took this back in about 2018. So it's not a new image, although this edit is a little bit newer than the original edit that I did on it. That is a stacked sky. So it's a shot with a Nikon D750 20mm f1.8, the old G mount, or F mount, sorry. They call it a G lens.
Yep.
So there's 10 stacked sky shots. I shot those at f2.2, 15-second shutter speed at ISO 2500. Now, 20 millimeters, 15 seconds is sort of at the you're starting to push for start trailing a little bit. And by the way, I'm going to talk about this aspect in my talk as well, because one of the things that we do a lot of is we look at technical specs. For example, if you looked up PhotoPills and you looked up the NPF chart to get spot stars, it would probably say to shoot that much. Well, it would say to shoot that much less than 15 seconds. But I've worked out that you have to balance these things out, and I'm willing to accept sometimes a little bit of star trailing, particularly in the corners, with light gathering ability, and therefore I can control the noise a little bit better. Anyway, this one I shot at 15 seconds, ISO 2500, and then I did some light painting on the foreground. Now, a lot of people watching this,
12.2
seconds, my videos, know I do a lot of this sort of stuff. Yeah. There's actually 8 separate photographs of that foreground shot at f5 at 15 seconds at ISO 500. So, and that's just blended together in Photoshop. Now, you could probably shoot this with far less than 8, but that's what I did at the time, and that's the end result. So I'm always looking for, I mean, you'll know all about this, Matt, but it's all about all about the angles, all about the light fall off, the spillage, the highlights and the shadows. And, I learned all of these principles doing portrait photography, doing especially theatre and music shows, all of those. That's what people do in the TV.
In your lighting. I could see it in your lighting.
Yeah. That's how it works. And so that's what I'm doing when I'm shooting something like this. But I also want to feature the night sky. So so the sky there is edited. Now, I typically use Lightroom to do my basic edits of imagery, but of course I need to use something that has layer-based editing ability, which is Photoshop, which I use Photoshop to actually blend everything together. So pretty much all of the images that I do that I'll show you here, they're all multiple shot images. I do have quite a few single shots, and I will be showing a lot of single shots in the talk that we do. But yeah, that's the basic story of that one. And yeah, I just love the scene. I love how the it looks like the tank, the machine is actually, it's looking into that little light dome on the far right of the image.
Look like that, yeah.
Which subliminally, or if you like, you put your creative hat on, it looks like the light dome, the light on the tank is coming from that light dome. Now we know if we look at the back, it's being lit from the back. We know our brain says, oh, well, that light's on the opposite side. But but it's sort of subliminal. I mean, images are supposed to take you on a bit of a journey. If someone can look at an image and start thinking, oh, I wonder, that to me is a win situation.
Here.
So I'm trying to do that always. And the other thing that I would say about this image is the composition is deliberately designed so that I can see the flat face of that back tank rather than completely side on.
Yep.
Because I think that makes it look a lot better. And the other thing I would say, so I've got a lot of things to say, haven't I? is that when I'm shooting something that has wheels, like a vehicle, car, truck, tractor, you name it, this has got wheels, even though everybody knows it doesn't go anywhere unless it's being towed or pushed. I always try to leave space in front of that vehicle for that natural, that's the direction it's going to be going if it's going anywhere.
That's so thoughtful.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So that comes into composition. And, composition to me is in photography of any sort is the number one consideration, because I think that a well-composed image, even if it's technically not great, can still be appealing to the eye. But I think a poorly composed image, even if it's technically brilliant, can still be just an average photograph.
Yes.
And, you learn these things by doing, but just doing it. I mean, photography is something that is a visual art form, and it has to appeal visually to people.
Right.
It's not just recording a moment in time. It can certainly be that, and it is that, but it's much more than that. It's a visual representation of sometimes, especially with these nightscapes, especially light painting nightscapes, it's a visual representation of what we see in our mind's eye just as much as what we see with our physical eyes.
Right. And what were you thinking for this one, for the old room?
Well, the first thing I was thinking is I was keeping an eye, making sure no one was creeping up behind me. It's a very scary place. This is in Tasmania. So Tasmania is the southernmost state of Australia. It's an island. So it's even further south than where I am in Victoria. So it's great for auroras because we need to go south to see auroras here.
Right.
Anyway, this is near the Port Arthur convict site. It's not the actual Port Arthur. Now, Port Arthur has a very bad history of abuse. It was a prison, basically a convict. So convicts were brought out from the UK and places like Scotland and Ireland way 200 years ago. And they kept them in these places. Anyway, this is now a tourist place, and it's called the Coal Mines site. And it's in Tasmania. And when you go there, it's very somber because of the history. And there's plaques and signs all around, but it's also very... it's in the middle of a forest, and it's dark, and there's animals around. You hear kangaroos and rabbits and things like that running around at night. Okay. And right. So it's a bit scary. I must admit, it's a bit scary. Anyway, apart from all of that, I was there. This was taken back in 2021. And this is another light painted image with a stacked sky. So I used, again, 10 images, stacked the sky at f2.8, again, 15 seconds at ISO 4000. So this is a bit higher ISO. There was a nice bit of air glow in the sky. You can see it there surrounding the Milky Way. And obviously, for most of you guys in the northern hemisphere, well, all of you in the northern hemisphere, the Milky Way is backwards, and it moves in the opposite direction. But it's still the same old Milky Way. And the foreground here, I shot 12 separate images on this. Mainly
crawling around and lighting it.
Moving around, lighting it. It was quite difficult to actually access because it's on a hill. There's lots of rocks. You can't run around. It's completely dangerous to try and do that. So I'm just in different areas, lighting sections of it. And they're 10-second shots at a low ISO, about 500. Typically, when I'm shooting light painted images like this, I lower the ISO and close down the aperture. And it might interest people to know that all of these images that I'm showing you, I think every single one of them, except one, and I'll explain that when I get to it. But all of these images are focused to infinity, even for the foreground. So I haven't changed the focus at all. All I do is stop down the aperture, which is, as we know, increases depth of field. And so those rocks that are fairly close to the front there, in this medium, I don't think we can zoom in, but they are in focus, and they are reasonably close to the actual camera. And so sometimes I'll shoot at, f8 or something like that to get even more depth of field. One thing I've, and I don't want to open a can of worms here, but one thing that I think landscape photographers overdo, and I'm talking daytime landscape, is focus stacking. I think they do way too much of it, because if you're shooting at f11 or f13, a lot of things are in focus that are much closer than shooting at f2.8 or f4 or whatever. I've talked to a lot of landscape photographers about this, and I think what we tend to do is we overshoot because we can, and just in case we need it, we've got it. And I think that's a fair assessment. But when it comes to understanding, so the whole concept of focus plane and everything else, it's an interesting study, and I won't get into it much here, but it's something I use to my advantage all the time, because one of the reasons I do that is so that I don't have to touch the focus ring, and I won't introduce focus breathing, which can be an issue, especially when you're trying to line images up with each other. But anyway, this image, I was really pleased with it because it's a beautiful dark sky. It would be a Bortle 2 probably sky, so it's quite dark, and beautiful, gorgeous sky. And the ruins themselves, I think anything that has texture and shape like this particular ruin has is going to be attractive, because the light falls off and it moves around those edges, and you got that gorgeous, the stonework. You can see every line between every stone. Whereas if it's just lit sort of
terrific
roughly from the front, you're not seeing any of that.
Yeah, I have two. First, I have Andrea dropping in to just say that she loves the colors of your images, that you have a beautiful white balance. And she followed it up with, does Richard use a remote and a trigger for his 10 to 12 second shots?
Yes, thank you, Andrea. That's very kind of you. The first question about the white balance, I've tried all sorts of different white balances over the years. I tend to set my white balance in camera. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that, because I know a lot of people just use auto white balance and then adjust it, in say Lightroom, because you can with the raw files. I think for me personally, I always set a white balance, and that's because, well, number one reason I think is because being in the education space, if I tell people I just set an auto white balance, then that's not helping anybody. That they don't understand what white balance is. And secondly, it gives me a launching. I know I have a consistent color in every single image because I've set the white balance. Now these days I tend to set my white balance to about somewhere between 4,000 and 4,800 Kelvin, roughly in that area, sometimes a bit higher. So for example, if it was moonlit, I would go higher because the moon makes the sky bluer. And, when you're shooting time lapses and things like that, I've got to be mindful of things like that, because I don't want the color to change in a time lapse sequence, for example. And also the other thing I've noticed is over the years is that different camera manufacturer brands have different white balance. They're not standard. It's the same with ISO. It's not standard across the field.
Oh, that's true.
So for example, my camera at 4,800 Kelvin is probably going to be different to someone's, say, a Sony A7S, A7 IV or something at 48. They'll probably look a bit different in camera. So, but yeah, I think mainly it's from the educational standpoint, because if I want to answer the question why, which I mentioned before, why do I set my camera to 4,800? That's an easy to answer. If I say, why do I set it to auto? Oh, it's because I'm lazy, or is it because that's not a very good, that's not as good a response. But having said that, auto white balance is fine. The camera will default closer to daylight in my experience than anything else, and then you change it in software later. The other part of the question about the remote trigger, yes, I always use a wireless remote trigger, and you can see why. I mean, if I've got to go to the other side of this building and trigger the camera, I want to be away from the camera to do it, and yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. Holy cow, look at this.
Yeah. This is the panorama.
Tell me. Wow.
Yeah, now this is a very interesting scene. So this is it's a, well, firstly, this is a tracked sky panorama. So it's 8 shots using a Skywatcher Star Adventurer Mini I used for this, which is a great little tracker. I love that tracker. It was f2.8, 60 seconds shutter speed at ISO 1600. So that's 8 shots in a portrait orientation side by side. And this is facing south to east. It's across the southeast into the northern sky. So you can see Orion there, which is upside down for you guys. Orion, when I shot this, it was in the northeastern sky. And at the right-hand side of the image, you can see that that's actually the Southern Cross, which is very, very low down, because I shot this in December of 2024. So it's, it's at that time of year, it's quite low. But this is shot with an astro modified camera, and it sees a lot of that pinky H alpha stuff that's up in the sky, and there's quite a lot of it in the southern hemisphere sky. You can see it there. That's called the Gum Nebula, that great big round blob of red. And it is huge, and you cannot see that with the naked eye. And a standard camera without an astro mod doesn't get very much of that at all. Now, when I'm talking about an astro modified camera, it's just a standard, what they call a visible plus H alpha modification. I'm not using any extra filters or anything like that. A lot of people these days do use extra filters just to capture H alpha. I've resisted that. I think especially in a very dark sky location like we have here, you can see a lot of this pink and red anyway, as you can see from this. And by the way, this is being a panorama. It's not stacked. It is a tracked image, but it's not stacked. I haven't stacked the panels. It's just one panel after another.
And how long were they each exposure?
They were 60 seconds, so 1 minute shutter speed.
Wow.
And so that I took that, and then I took the foreground, which is 8. It's also 8. It's an 8-shot panorama, and I shot that wide open at f1.8. So it was a 20mm lens at f1.8. 15 seconds at ISO 4000. And I know the first question a lot of people are going to ask me, why didn't you just shoot longer foreground shutter speed? Because I could, because it's not moving, right? It's the foreground. And it wasn't windy, and they're only dead trees. They're not going to move anyway. And the answer is I was dead tired. It was getting late. I just wanted to get it done. And that's the reason I shot wide open at f1.8. More light gathering power, and you can see it looks like it's almost daytime.
You got the shot, and it's gorgeous. This is
stunning. and it's a dam. This is what we call a dam. I don't know what you call them in the US, but it's just on a farmer's property, a pool of water. It's probably from one side of that dam to the other would probably be 50 feet. So it's not big. And I used did the panorama to make sure I captured the whole scene. So now I did do a video on this particular photograph, and I went out on location. And when you're on location, it does not look very spectacular. Believe me, it's just a pool of water in a muddy little spot. But anyway, that's how I shot it. So I actually processed each panorama separately, because obviously the tracked pano has any landscape elements in it are going to blur out. So I processed that separately to the bottom half, and then just blended them together in Photoshop. I tend to use the sky replacement in Photoshop to do that, and it does a really good job up front. And then you just sort of this is the way I do it. I mask out manually things like the dead tree, and then just whatever edits are required to make sure they blend properly together.
Fantastic. All right. Yeah. We're getting close. We got 2 more images left.
Okay. Well,
what's
this one.
Story behind this.
This one is a very interesting image. Very interesting story. I've called this one railway spikes because those spikes on the underneath the fence post. There's a railway line just behind the camera, and I actually did a video on this too. So if you go back a couple of years on my videos, you'll see this. This is shot at 35mm focal length. So
cool.
That made it interesting. Now, harder to shoot because focus was a problem, and I'm reasonably close and very low. The camera is touching the ground. It's on the tripod, virtually as low as I can get the camera. And the reason for that is because I want that fence post to be the real star of the show. And the basic rule that I apply, and it's a basic rule of photography, is the lower your camera is, the more your foreground stands out. And so if I stood up, for example, the foreground becomes insignificant in comparison to the background. And and I'm not necessarily talking about the sky here. I'm talking about the other elements in the background. So I want to get that horizon down low because the horizon is not featuring at all in this picture. And that's as low as I could get it because the camera's already on the ground. But the biggest problem I had here was focusing because I'm shooting at 35mm. So on this particular shot, and the other problem I had was it was really windy. So I had the grass and whatever was blowing around and moving. So I had to try and work out. And this is where the creative side of my brain is thinking, okay, I can see the image. I'd already scouted it out during the daytime. I knew the Milky Way lined up beautifully in the background. How do I get it? Now I've got to go over to the technical side of my brain to say, well, technically, how am I going to shoot this? So the sky part's easy. That's a single tracked sky at f2.8, 60 seconds, ISO 1600. So it's the same as the other one. I just used, and on this one I used a, what did I think it was either the Nomad or the Star Adventurer, either of which would get the shot. But being windy, when you use a star tracker in the wind, anyone who uses a star tracker in wind, it's not a good combination. So I put my star tracker right up against the car, lifted the tailgate on the hatch and tried to create a windbreak. And I do that a lot. And it does work because anything that will take the wind away from hitting the tracker. Anyway, I was very happy with that. That's one single exposure, the sky, one single shot. The foreground is, I took 6 separate images. Now I did have to focus stack this. So I did actually focus on the spikes and on the fence post. And I stopped my camera right down. Well, I varied it. I actually took a couple of images at f10, believe it or not, at ISO 200. And that's a very unusual exposure to take for a night image. But and I was playing around because of the wind. I was trying to get sharp images. That was my main concern here. So those railway spikes, which they use to hammer down the railway lines onto the sleepers, and they're old discarded ones, and they just threw them up against the fence post. And when I first found this location, I thought, man, that looks so beautifully artistic, randomly artistic, I thought. And so anyway, some of these shots I shot at f5.6 at ISO 800. So I was varying my exposure. And the reason I did that was to try and freeze the movement of the moving grass. Now, some people might ask, I could have used a flash to do that. And that's not a bad idea. I could use a flash because that would definitely freeze movement. But the big problem was I didn't have one with me. I wasn't planning on using a flash. So I used a flashlight. It's just a torch, a flashlight. That's how I've lit all of these so far that you've seen. So how do I do that in a very short space of time? Well, I've got to give it a bit more grunt. I've got to put more light into it. Now, if you zoom in close, you'll see that potentially there is some blurry ones that are moving. The other thing I did, and this is good old-fashioned gardening, I went in there and ripped out some of the long tussocks of grass. Well, I mean, they were the ones that were going to show the most. So I just ripped them out.
Live editing, yeah.
yeah, live editing, and nothing was harmed in the making of this image. I can tell you that.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's how I did it. So I shot about 6 foreground shots. This was a bit harder to blend because the focus was important to me, but the barbed wire of the fence, and in fact the ruggedness of the fence posts and the barbed wire is what makes this image really appeal to me. And the fact that if you notice there's a hole in the fence, like the what do they call that, ring lock fence or whatever it is. It's like there's been a hole cut into it. Now I didn't do any of that. That's there, but that tree in the background lines up beautifully with the hole. And I can tell you, I did not plan that because I couldn't see the tree in the background. The tree, everything was dark when I was there. Okay. And when I got back and started in, I thought, oh, that tree lines up beautifully. Full confession, I didn't line it up deliberately, but I'm glad I did.
A happy accident.
A happy accident, yes.
That's lovely.
So, in my nightscape images, I'm always trying to create at least one point of interest, but probably 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. So in an image like this, I've got the railway spikes, which are definitely a point of interest, and the fence post and the wire itself. They're definitely points of interest. It makes you look through the image. And then, of course, the Milky Way sky is a point of interest. So, awesome. And it was really funny because when I was there that night, it was the moon was about to rise, so I was time limited to shoot that sky to make sure I didn't want the moon to rise and sort of wash out the scene, so I had to do that. And then I had all of that done, finished the shot, and then a train came along. This old goods train or something came along, and it was like, oh man, it's all happening out here, and I really felt like, yeah, this has been a good night. There's a lot going on. I'm limited for time. I've got the wind blowing, but it all seems to work out okay.
Yes. Wow. Good work. What a great story. I'm gonna have to go find that episode.
Yeah, it's back there a little while ago. Okay, so this image here, this relates definitely to my talk in a month or so, because I'll be using this image to show a single, a stack, and a tracked image, which I did a video on a couple of years ago on this exact night and this location. But I thought it's appropriate to use that because that's what my talk is about, the noise difference and the actual look and the difference between doing all these different methods for shooting. So this is stacked. So it's 10 shots. And that foreground, the silo is a long way away from the camera, so there's no issues with focus or anything on this one. I've opened the aperture right up to f1.8. So this is something I'm going to talk about in my discussion, but I stop down my aperture a bit as we do to get sharper and better edge performance and so forth. But we have these wide aperture lenses for a reason. It's so that we can use them if we really need to. And so this is shot at f1.8, 13 seconds at ISO 3200. And there's 10 shots stacked. So I just shot them one after the other, 10 in a row. And one of the things that I find to be an advantage of doing that, and I will talk about this also in my talk, is that I'm a Windows user, so I'm using Sequator as a stacking software. So you can use Landscape Stacker as a Mac user, and it does exactly the same thing. It stacks the foreground and the sky at the same time. So that's a great advantage for noise reduction, because if you're a foreground that is shot at only 13 seconds is going to be fairly noisy. And so by shooting a stack of 10, then the noise reduction is significant and certainly possibly worth doing. Now, if I was shooting that foreground at another time, I may shoot for a longer shutter speed. And I've done this plenty of times where I've shot, say, 30 seconds or longer than that, maybe a minute or 2 minutes. And I can even lower the ISO and get a pretty good, clean image. But there are times when you just don't necessarily have the time, or something else is happening and you want to get it done a bit quicker. So by still using a shorter shutter speed and stacking, you can get a pretty good result. And as you can see, this is wide open at f1.8. So I'm not worried about the very, very close foreground, because I know that's going to be out of focus at 1.8. It doesn't matter, because that's it's not the focus of this image.
Right. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. Well, I can't wait to learn more about your work.
Yeah, so this is taken with that astro modified camera. That's why the Milky Way has got a lot of the sort of pinky magenta-y colors in there. But yeah, I did a video after this one showing the edit. I did an edit on the single frame. So I've got a single, and this is the stacked one and a tracked one, and comparing them. And I will be showing all three of those images in my talk. But I did a video on just editing the single frame. So I took this same shot, just one of them, at f1.8, 13 seconds, ISO 3200, and did a complete edit. It's on YouTube for everyone to see. And the end result is surprisingly really good. So one thing I've learned especially in the past, I reckon 2 to 3 years, is that editing, the tools that are available for us to edit now are far greater than they ever used to be. And you can probably recover some images that in the past may have been not quite there. But now there's some stuff out there that really does help. But that is a learning curve, which again is part of my talk when we do the talk. And yeah, obviously in the time I've got to do that talk, you can't fit every single dynamic in, but we can talk about, we can go over a lot of different things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, that's an image, and that's a typical Australian sky. I shot that in, I think it might have been February of 2024. So it's a couple of years ago, and that's a morning sky. So let's say about 3 o'clock in the morning. That's what the sky looks like here in February, with the Milky Way well and truly above the horizon. There is a little bit of light pollution behind that silo, so it's probably facing into about a Bortle 3 sky. There's a small town. So here in Australia, we have big cities, but we don't have big cities in the country. There's small towns. So there might be, 5,000 people or 6,000 people that live there or something. So the light dome is not a massive amount of irritation for us nightscape photographers. In fact, sometimes you can use the light pollution in that case to help, because it actually highlights the subject, but it doesn't wash the sky out, or it backlights, I should say, a subject like it does here. But it still doesn't really wash out what the sky looks like above the scene.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm just going to say Australia is definitely getting towards the top of my bucket list now after seeing just these 5 images and hearing your stories.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I can't wait for your talk. This is going to be so good. I can't wait to see what you've learned. And I bet everybody here is really eager to see that too. We had one question, and it was about the fence posts. It was from Jay. Jay asked, are the fence posts old discarded rail ties?
Ties? No, I don't think so. I think the fence posts are actual trees. What the farmers did, what the sawmills and things did, they just chopped down trees and roughly cut them into fence post sizes. So, but there are a lot of fence posts around in Australia that are very rugged, which suits me as a photographer. I like the rugged look, the old weathered look.
So good, yeah.
Yeah, it looks very good. So they're replacing all of the timber railway ties. I think what the question was about, with concrete now. Concrete is ugly. It doesn't look good. It's flat and boring, and so they call that progress. Well, from a photographer's perspective, that is not progressive at all.
No, you light it differently. It's got different textures and all that. So.
Yeah.
Wow. Richard, thank you so much for letting us sit under your learning tree today. Thank you for everybody who's joining us on all the platforms that we're streaming to. This has been a preview, a light preview, actually a really generous long preview from Richard about his talk for the 2026 or 6th annual Night Photo Summit. We're really, really pleased and honored that you're joining us. Thank you, Richard.
No, I loved being here, and Matt, I appreciate your time as well, and everyone that came to watch our discussion today.
Yeah. Well, we will see you on your YouTube channel. I posted links to Richard's YouTube channel. Please go follow that and subscribe to Richard's work if you're not already familiar with it, or go back and watch your favorite episodes. And we do hope that you join us at the Night Photo Summit. I just posted links to that. It's pretty easy to figure out. It's at nightphotosummit.com. That is February 13th through 15th, 2026. And we look forward to seeing each and every one of you there. Tell your friends and family. Richard, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to your live presentation during the summit. And we are really excited about this. Any parting words you'd like to share?
Oh, well, just thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. I think it's important to try and get the passion of why we do these things. This nightscape photography, it's not easy to do. It's hard work, but it is always worth it.
It is. It is. Well, to everybody out there that's practicing, no matter where you're at, keep doing it. It's totally worth it. And we will see you out under the stars. Go seize the night, and we look forward to gathering with you, whether it be virtually or in person. So have a terrific Sunday, or whatever day it is, wherever you're at, if you're watching this replay. Have a great day.
Yep.
Thank you, Richard. Cheers.
No worries. Thank you.